Hi, Miss Stallings class. Since you finished the one and only Ivan yesterday, you have libraries Thursday and Friday this week, so we're going to read one of my weirder school books called Miss Kraft is Daft. Chapter 1. All about snot. My name is AJ, and I hate snot. Isn't snot gross? Liquid gunk comes out of your nose. How could that not be gross? Last week, my teacher, Mr. Granite, who is from another planet, came to school sneezing, wheezing, and coughing. His nose was red. He looked terrible. Are you sick, Mr. Granite? Asked this crybaby girl named Emily. My head is all stuffed up, said Mr. Granite, and then he blew his nose into the tissue. Well, he didn't really blow his nose into the tissue. If he had done that, he wouldn't have a nose anymore. He blew the snot from his nose into a tissue. Then he threw the tissue in the garbage can. Ew! I thought I was going to throw up. I thought this was... that's the most disgusting, almost as disgusting as blowing the snot straight into the garbage can. Warning, this chapter is inappropriate for children and grown-ups. Excuse me, Mr. Granite said. I need to go get more tissue. While Mr. Granite was out of the room, the class had a very interesting discussion. If your head is all snuffed up, asked Alexia, this girl who rides a skateboard all the time, I guess that means your head is full of snot. No, it's not, I said. Get it? No, it's not. Nobody laughed at my joke, so I pretended I never made it. If you ever tell a joke and nobody laughs, just pretend that you never made the joke and keep talking. That's the first rule of being a kid. A head can't be full of snot, I explained, because if it was full of snot, there'd be no room for your brain. That wouldn't be a problem with you, said Andrea, this annoying girl with curly brown hair, because you don't have a brain. Oh, snap, said Ryan, who will eat anything, even stuff that isn't food. Your face doesn't have a brain, I told Andrea. I knew that it didn't make sense, but I couldn't think of anything else to say. Maybe our heads are always making more snot, said Michael, who never ties his shoes. Or maybe our brain takes up half of our head and the other half is made of snot, said Neil, who we call the new kid even though he wears clothes. Maybe our brains turn into snot as we get older, I suggested. So when we get really old, our heads are completely full of snot. We had to end the discussion because Mr. Granite came back into the class with a box of tissues. He was still sniffling as we pledged allegiance and did word of the day. Let's get to work, said Mr. Granite. Turn to page 23 in your math book. Ugh, I hate math. I'll do anything to get out of math. Mr. Granite made a big honking noise with his nose. Maybe you should go home, Mr. Granite, I suggested. You'd feel a lot better. And we wouldn't have to do math. Nice try, AJ, he replied. Page 23 is my favorite math lesson. But every time I try and work on it with you kids, we get called to an assembly. Well, I checked. There's no assembly today. I'm not going to let a little cold stop me from... He didn't get the chance to finish his sentence because an announcement came over the loudspeaker. All classes, please report to the all-purpose room for a surprise assembly. Not again, shouted Mr. Granite. He was so mad, I thought he might jump out of our window. No more Mr. Nice Guy. We had to walk 100 million miles to the all-purpose room for the surprise assembly. I don't know why they call it an all-purpose room, because you can't use it for bungee jumping. Our principal, Mr. Klutz, was up on the stage with our vice principal, Miss Jaffe, and our school counselor, Dr. Brad. They're usually smiling and giving us high fives when we walk in for an assembly. But not this time. All three of them had on mean faces. "What's up with them?" I whispered as we sat down. "It looks like they got up on the wrong side of the bed," whispered Andrea. "What difference does it make which side of the bed you get up on?" I asked. "It's an expression, Arlo," said Andrea, rolling her eyes. "She calls me by my real name because she knows I don't like it." "Maybe somebody died," whispered Ryan. Mr. Klutz, Mrs. Jaffe, and Dr. Brad were all wearing t-shirts that said Boggs on them. "What do you think Boggs stands for?" whispered Neil, the nude kid. "Big ostriches go slow," guessed Ryan. "Boring old geezer society," guessed Michael. "Body odor gets stinky," guessed Alexia. "Be on guard." I didn't get a chance to finish my sentence because Mr. Klutz held up his hand and made the shut up peace sign. Miss Jaffe tapped on the microphone. Everybody stopped talking. It was so quiet in the all-purpose room you could hear a pin drop. That is, if anybody brought pins to school and started dropping them. But why would anybody do a dumb thing like that? "We are disappointed in you, children," said Mrs. Jaffe. Once again, Dirk's school got the award for having the best behavior of the month. Dirk School is on the other side of town. That's where all the genius kids go. We call it Dork School. Miss Jaffe sat down and Dr. Brad stepped up to the microphone. "We've been having a lot of behavior problems lately," he said. "Students have been yelling and running through the hallways. Kids are talking back to their teachers. There have been food fights and riots. This is not the way children are supposed to behave in school. So we're starting a program to improve behavior and teach respect here at elementary school." Dr. Brad sat down, and Mr. Klutz stepped up to the microphone. He has no hair at all. I mean none. Mr. Klutz's head is really shiny. They could use it to signal ships that are lost at sea. BOGS stands for Behave or Get Suspended, said Mr. Klutz. "I've tried to be kind to you children, but it didn't work. So from now on, there's no more Mr. Nice Guy. Students who misbehave will be suspended." Wow, I remember when Mr. Klutz was a good guy. One time, I got sent to his office for bad behavior, and he gave me a candy bar. That was cool. Now, he's all mean. "I expect exemplary behavior at elementary school," he continued, "and that is all I have to say. I will be checking in on your classrooms regularly to see how you're making out." "Ew, disgusting," I shouted. Mr. Klutz said, "making out." "Quiet," roared Mr. Klutz. "Enough of this foolishness." Chapter 3. Mr. Granite is dying. We had to walk 100 million miles back to class in single file. Everybody was being really quiet. Nobody wanted to get in trouble with Mr. Klutz. I looked around for Mr. Granite, but I couldn't find him. When we passed the front office, our school nurse, Miss Cooney, pulled me out of line. She is beautiful and has eyes that look like cotton candy. One time she wanted me to marry her, but I couldn't because she was already married to some guy named Mr. Cooney. "AJ," she whispered, "please tell your class that Mr. Granite went home for the rest of the day." "Is he going to be okay?" I asked. "Oh, yes," said Miss Clooney. "He only has a cold." I ran to catch up with the rest of the class. They were just going into our room, and everybody sat still on their best behavior. Even the guys folded their hands on their desks and kept their feet on the floor. It was weird. "Where's Mr. Granite?" Neil, the nude kid, whispered to me. "Mr. Granite has a cold," I whispered, "so he went home for the rest of the day. Spread the word." Neil turned around and whispered to Emily, "Mr. Granite is old, so he went home for the rest of the day." Emily opened her eyes really wide. Then she turned around and whispered to Ryan, "Mr. Granite is old, so we went to a rest home," she said. Ryan leaned over to whisper to Michael, "Mr. Granite was put in a home for the rest of his life." Michael turned around and whispered to Andrea, "Mr. Granite was put in an old age home to rest until he's dead." "Mr. Granite is dying?" shouted Andrea. Suddenly, everyone started yelling, screaming, crying, and freaking out. "But Mr. Granite is so young," wailed Michael. "He was such a good man," moaned Neil, the nude kid. "I need to speak to the grief counselor," screamed Emily. Why? Everybody was moaning. Kids were weeping, holding their heads, and wiping their eyes. Girls were talking about what they were going to wear to Mr. Granite's funeral. That's when Mr. Klutz came running into the classroom like his hair was on fire. That is, if he had any hair. Hey, maybe that's how he lost his hair in the first place. "What's the matter?" he shouted. "Is somebody hurt?" "Mr. Granite is dying," yelled Andrea. "No, he's not," said Mr. Klutz. "He has a cold. So he went home for the rest of the day." "Who told you he was dying?" Ryan looked at me. Alexia looked at me. Michael looked at me. Emily looked at me. Everybody was looking at me. "AJ told us that Mr. Granite is dying," Andrea said, pointing to me. "I did not." "You did too." "Did not." "Did too." We went on like that for a while until Mr. Klutz clapped his hands together. Clap, clap, clappity clap. 5 claps meant shut up. Nobody knows why. "Remember what I said about your behavior," said Mr. Klutz as he left the room. "If you kids can't behave, some of you are going to be suspended. I'm not fooling around." Chapter 4. It takes brains to be a sub. You know what it means when your teacher gets sick? It means you have a substitute teacher. Yay. Having a sub is cool because you don't have to work or learn anything. You can do whatever you want. It's too bad teachers can't be sick all the time. Then school would be fun. I pulled out my comic book and put my feet up on my desk. This was going to be the greatest day of my life. But you'll never believe who ran into the door at that moment. It was a lady dressed up like a clown and riding a unicycle. She ran right into the door. "Ouch," the clown lady said as she got up off the floor. "That hurt." Everybody laughed because it's always hilarious when people crash into things and fall down. Nobody knows why. If you ask me, there should be a TV station that shows nothing but people crashing into things and falling down all day long. That would be cool. "Hi, boys and girls," the clown lady said. "My name is Miss Kraft." "Are you a clown or a teacher?" asked Andrea. "Both," said Miss Kraft. "I'm a clown and a teacher. We're going to have fun and learn at the same time." "That's impossible," I said. "Don't be a grumpy Gus," said Miss Kraft. "Watch this." "What's 2 times 1? 2, we all shouted. Miss Kraft put her hand up to her face. Then she pulled a red handkerchief and a blue handkerchief out of her nose. What's 2 times 2? 4, we all shouted. Miss Kraft pulled 4 colorful handkerchiefs out of her nose. What's 2 times 3? She asked. 6, we all shouted. Miss Kraft pulled 6 colorful handkerchiefs out of her nose. It was amazing. Wow, we all shouted, which is Mom, upside down. How did you fit all those handkerchiefs up your nose? Asked Ryan. Easy, said Miss Kraft. I took my brain out. She searched in her pocket and never believed in 1,000,000 years what she had in there. A brain. Eek, everybody screamed. Even the guys. Emily, the big crybaby, was hiding under her desk. What's the matter? Miss Kraft asked her. I'm afraid of clowns, Emily said, whimpering. Clowns are creepy. Well, she's right about that. Clowns are creepy. Nobody knows why. There's nothing to be afraid of, Miss Kraft said. Would anybody else like me to take out their brain? Me, shouted all the boys. Miss Kraft went over to Michael and put her hand on the back of his head. When she pulled it away, she had another brain in her hand. Eek! Emily freaked and went running out of the room. Sheesh, get a grip. That girl will fall for anything. You should take out AJ's brain, Miss Kraft, said Andrea. He never uses it. Oh, snap, said Ryan. Yeah, take out my brain, I said. Miss Kraft came over to me and put her hands on the back of my head. When she pulled it away, she had a third brain in her hand. Then she threw all the brains up in the air and started to juggle them. Look, said Miss Kraft, I'm juggling brains. Clowns are weird. Chapter 5, Clowning Around. Miss Kraft was still juggling 3 brains when Mr. Klutz came in. Ah, I see you've met your substitute teacher, he said. Miss Kraft just graduated from Clown College. They have colleges for clowns? Asked Alexia. Oh, yes, said Miss Kraft. This year I took classes in magic tricks, unicycle riding, and advanced balloon animals. Cool, we all said. When I get bigger, I want to go to clown college, I said. I'm sure your parents will be happy to hear that, AJ, said Mr. Klutz. I just wanted to come in to assure you kids that Mr. Granite is fine and will be back tomorrow. Until then, I expect you all to be on your best behavior, just like you would be if Mr. Granite was here. I'm always on my best behavior, said Andrea. What is her problem? Good, said Mr. Klutz, because I know what happens when there's a substitute in the class. I was a boy once, you know. Just once, I said. I'm a boy all the time. No, I mean that I used to be your age, he told us, and we used to give the subs a hard time. But if there's going to be any bad behavior in here, there are going to be suspensions. Mr. Klutz left the room. Hey, do you kids want to see a cool magic trick? Asked Miss Kraft. Yeah, we all yelled. Watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat. But you don't have a hat, said Ryan. Oh, you're right. Then watch me pull a hat out of my rabbit. She waved her arm around, and suddenly there was this big puff of smoke. When the smoke cleared, she was holding a rabbit. It's adorable, yelled all the girls. Then Miss Kraft waved her arm around again, and there was another puff of smoke. When the smoke cleared, she was holding a big top hat. The rabbit climbed out of it. Wow, we all said, which is, as you know, is Mom upside down. Miss Kraft did some card tricks and coin tricks. Then she sang a song while she played a banjo. After that, she did a funny clown dance, gave us candy, and made us some balloon animals. Miss Kraft was cool. This was even better than having a regular sub. We didn't have to do any schoolwork, Plus, they brought in a clown to entertain us. Having Miss Kraft as a sub is like going to a birthday party all day long. Is everyone having fun? She asked. Yay, we all yelled. I wish you were our teacher every day, I told her. Do you want to know the surprise ending? Well, I'm not going to tell you. So nanny nanny boo boo on you. Chapter 6. The Big Bang. Miss Kraft is the coolest sub in the history of the world. We were going to play games, eat junk food, and have fun all day. What are you going to do now, Miss Kraft? Asked Alexia. Yeah, are you going to make more balloon animals? Asked Ryan. No, said Miss Kraft. Are you going to give us candy and cookies? Asked Michael. No, said Miss Kraft. Are you going to ride your unicycle and juggle some more? Asked Emily. No, said Miss Kraft. Then what are you going to do? Turn to page 23 in your math book, she said. What? I think my jaw dropped open and my eyes popped out of my head, like in the cartoons. But, I stuttered, I thought we were going to have to play games and have fun today. We played games, Miss Kraft said. We had fun. Now it's time to learn something. No, this simply was not happening. I looked at the loudspeaker on the wall. I was sure we would get called to a surprise assembly. Or maybe there would be a fire drill. Or maybe an asteroid would destroy the Earth and the school would be canceled for the rest of our lives. Something was sure to happen, so we wouldn't have to do page 23. But nothing happened. We all pulled out our math books out of our desks. Yeah, said Andrea, I love math. Why can't a truck full of math books fall on Andrea's head? Are you really going to teach us page 23? Asked Neil the nude kid. Of course not, said Miss Kraft. I don't know anything about math. Mr. Bongo is going to teach you page 23. Who's Mr. Bongo? We all asked. Miss Kraft pulled a white sock out of her pocket and put it on her head. This is Mr. Bongo. He's my friend. Sock puppets are weird. Whoever thought up the idea of making puppets out of socks was a dumbhead. And I'll tell you, this was the lamest sock puppet in the history of the world. It was basically a sock with two big googly eyes on it. Hi, kids, said Mr. Bongo, even then, though we could totally see Miss Kraft's lips moving. Turn to page 23 in your math books. I opened my math book and turned to page 23. That's when I saw these horrible words. The 11 timetables. No, not the 11 timetables, anything but the 11 timetables. Mr. Grant taught us all the timetables up to 10, but he never got to page 23. I always wondered what was on page 23, and now I found out the horrible truth. My friend Billy, who lives around the corner, told me that the times tables can only go up to 10. Billy said that if you try to multiply numbers higher than 10, the earth will fall off its axis. And if you get all the way up to 11 times 11, you get sucked into a parallel universe and you travel back in time until you get to the Big Bang, when your head explodes. Billy knows all about stuff like this. He told me he knew a kid who tried to multiply 11 times 11, and the kid's head exploded. That is a true fact. I told everybody on the playground about it. Okay, let's get started, Mr. Bongo said. 11 times 11. 1 times 11 equals 11. That's easy, right? Are you sure you want to do this? I said. Don't talk to me about it, said Miss Kraft. Talk to Mr. Bongo. He's the one who's teaching the lesson. 2 times 11 equals 22, said Mr. Bongo, because 11 added to 11 equals 22. You really shouldn't be doing this, said Michael. It's very dangerous. 3 times 11 equals 33. I have to go to the bathroom, said Ryan. Later, said Miss Kraft. 4 times 11 equals 44, said Mr. Bongo. I'm scared, said Emily. 5 times 11 equals 55. If he gets to 11 times 11, I whispered to Ryan, we're going to get sucked into a parallel universe and travel through time until our heads explode. 6 times 11 equals 66. Make him stop, begged Neil, the nude kid. Please, make him stop. 7 times 11 equals 77, said Mr. Bongo. He's getting close to the end, said Andrea. 8 times 8 equals 88, said Mr. Bongo. I want my mummy. Mommy, said Emily. She was hiding under her desk. 9 times 11 equals 99, said Mr. Bongo. Help, shouted Ryan. I'm too young to die. 10 times 11 equals 110. Goodbye, cruel world, shouted Michael. Everyone was hiding under their desks, holding their hands over their ears and freaking out. 11 times 11 equals, this is it, I yelled, closing my eyes. I'm gonna miss you guys. 122. Oh, 121, said Mr. Bongo. I felt my head to see if it had exploded. All the pieces seemed to be there. I peeked through my fingers to see if the world was still there. Nothing happened. The only thing that was different was that Mr. Klutz was standing in the doorway. What's the meaning of this? He yelled. Why are you children hiding under your desk during a math lesson? We don't want to get sucked into a parallel universe. Mr. Klutz looked really mad. I thought he was going to suspend the whole class, but he just turned around and stormed down the hall. Okay, so my friend Billy was wrong. We didn't get sucked into a parallel universe and travel through time until our heads explode. I still say sock puppets are weird. Chapter 7. The Truth About Miss Kraft. After we finished the math lesson, it was time for lunch. We had to walk in single file 1,100,000 miles to the vomitorium. I sat with Alexia and the guys, but Andrea and Emily weaseled their way onto the end of our table. Just so annoying. We all had peanut butter and jelly sandwiches except Ryan. He had a turkey witch sand, which is a sandwich that has the meat on the outside and the bread in the middle. Miss Kraft is weird, I said. Yeah, I thought she was going to be cool when she was doing all that clown stuff, but then she made us do math. She's just like every other teacher, said Alexia. All she ever wants to do is teach us stuff. Yeah, she's no fun at all. That's when little Miss Know-It-All had to open her big mouth. Learning is a good thing, you know, Andrea said. When you learn new things, it makes you a better person. Could you possibly be any more boring? Asked Alexia. Andrea and Alexia started sticking their tongues out at each other, which is what you do when somebody says something mean to you. Little Miss Perfect was getting on my nerves. I tried to think of something I could do that would annoy her, so I picked up 2 straws and put them in my nostrils. Look, I'm a walrus, I announced. Everybody laughed, except Andrea, of course. That's disgusting, Arlo, she said. So is your face, I told her. Oh, snap, said Ryan. I was going to put 2 more straws into my ears, but you never believe, in 100 million years, who came over to our table at that moment. It was Mr. Klutz. He looked a little happier than before, but just to be on the safe side, I pulled the straws out of my nose and threw them under the table. The straws, that is, not my nostrils. It would be weird to throw your nostrils under a table. Hi, everybody, said Mr. Klutz. I just wanted to see how you're making out with Miss Kraft. Ooh, gross, I said. We weren't making out with Miss Kraft. Isn't she a great teacher? Asked Mr. Klutz. Miss Kraft is wonderful, said Andrea. She makes learning fun. Mr. Klutz liked hearing that, and he went on to ask the kids at the other tables how much they liked making out with Miss Kraft. I was just thinking, I told everybody after he left, maybe Miss Kraft isn't a real substitute at all. What do you mean? Well, I said, maybe she's just a clown who ran away from the circus. Okay, we will have to end right here, and then we'll finish it, I hope, on Friday.